Hey, hello Diablo community. Welcome to the first ever Diablo 4 campfire chat.
Now, this is not
First ever.
This is not a live stream.
This is not, well, this is,
even though it's live.
it is live.
Now, it's not a dev stream.
It's not a developer update live stream.
Right.
As you guys know, this is a little bit different than what we had before. We still will have developer update live streams, but campfire chats, this is kind of a new show for us. We wanted to get an opportunity to get in front of the community and use this as a way of being able to talk with you guys whenever we need to, and in a casual format. So don't expect a lot of like trailers or videos and so forth in this one. We still will have developer update live streams. Our next one is going to be in July, but we are most definitely going to have more of these campfire chats here in the future. And with those developer update live streams, you will get those big announcements and the big reveals and us going into more detail about big updates that might be coming up in the future. But for campfire chats, we want to use this format to kind of chat with the community and make sure that you all get an opportunity to actually hear from us and talk to us a little bit more often.
I still think my brand, like I was saying, instead of if we keep this seating arrangement instead of between two ferns, it'd be between two jerks, but he wouldn't go for it.
Rod made up this joke literally 30 seconds ago, so.
Like, aren't you supposed to make up jokes on the fly? Like, what do you like script all your jokes? So you workshop them?
I mean, it didn't work like, 30 seconds ago.
You know, sometimes you have to be funny off camera and then try to be funny on camera. You know, it doesn't always. The magic has to happen when it happens, Adam.
Well, magic that did happen.
So you can see why this is a campfire.
Yeah. And we have to get we actually have to get a campfire in here.
You do, or at least a flickering orange light.
And then
movie magic.
Well, a flickering light as opposed to a real campfire, so we don't burn down everything. And then
That's security watch we allow.
And then suddenly everyone will hate us. But we.
I brought s'mores.
You did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I brought a version of s'mores. Like, I wanted Oreo s'mores, and I got Target like gerbated me, so I'm like. I have the Target brand s'mores flavored cookies. So if we want to really get into the campfire notion, we could eat s'mores while talking about the game.
Rod just wanted to eat on camera.
You don't get a body like this without eating cookies, Tiffany. Like, come on.
Rod also has explained to us 3 or 4 different times about his unsuccessful attempts at buying s'mores.
I had a lot of desire to acquire Oreo s'mores last night.
It's been a morning.
S'moreos.
S'moreos.
I'm sorry, I'm saying it
S'moreos.
incorrectly. I wanted s'moreos last night and I failed, but I will drown my pain with Target brand s'mores cookies.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, while Rod is doing that, we do want to talk about launch and how that went. Obviously, D4 is now out in the wild. We had a really great launch. I mean, like it's. We know the community's been really amped about the game. Reviews have been really good. You know, it's been a couple weeks since launch itself, and also like huge shout out to the team here, the live ops team, Tiffany here. By the way, I haven't done
You didn't even introduce
I
people.
didn't even introduce
You're a terrible
This is
host.
completely
This is why it's
unscripted.
between two jerks.
Awful.
You didn't even introduce people.
Awful. All right, let me do that first before we
Did
actually.
you just make Joe Shelley facepalm?
It's the s'mores thing and the really bad joke. It's just
Can I
throwing me
creep with the
off.
plastic while you do?
Right next
Yeah,
to your mic.
Exactly.
Right next to
And- yeah, as you like bite into the plastic and rip it off and so forth.
Just introduce
Well,
the people.
All right. Well, we have Joe Shelley here, who's the game director for Diablo 4. We have Tiffany Watt here, who's our associate production director for Diablo 4, and then of course Rod Ferguson.
The notion
S'moreo connoisseur.
Yeah, the S'moreo addict. But I mean, beyond just associate production, like Tiffany's, what is it? Your sphere of influence, your remit of control, the things you're like. But live ops is your thing, right? That's kind of the thing.
Yes, it's one of the things I'm very passionate about. I work with a very, very large live ops team that goes beyond just the Diablo 4 team. So definitely congratulations to everybody across Blizzard that's been supporting us. Lots of time spent in the war room. Lots of time with Adam. Adam was
Which is, it's a penalty unto
it's
itself.
penalty. Yes, is the worst
Absolutely
part.
awful.
No, it was really exciting to work with people across the globe. So lots of Zoom chats, but also a physical war room here on campus, and it was just really cool to finally launch this game, work with so many people to bring it to so many players. So congratulations to everybody, and I'm really glad that everybody is playing.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I think we have sort of in a way a represent like of a great game and a great launch, right? Like the notion of sometimes you can have a really awesome game and the launch can kind of get in the way of it. You don't get to experience that great game the way you want to, and so I think these are two great people to represent that 90 rated game and then the ability to play it since it was launched. So it's awesome. And yeah, thank you so much to everybody who play. We just crossed 350 million hours of play. Which is phenomenal and very exciting. So again, thank you so much. And part of this conversation, I think, really is about that. Like, what happens to a game that gets 350 million hours of play against it? And so, obviously when you're making the game, you can't apply 350 million hours of playtime against it to find, oh, maybe this balance isn't quite what we wanted, or this feature isn't working quite the way we want. And so we wanted to take this opportunity to kind of talk about, now that we've seen it out there by the way, it's only been 10 days, and we talk about the Diablo 4. This launch is really just the beginning of our journey with Diablo 4. This is something we're going to support for years to come. We're working on seasons. We're working on expansions. Notice that was a plural word, and so all that stuff is going into the future. And so the fact that we love the feedback. We're on day 10, and and that's something that we're really this is the kind of stuff we're focused on. I do if I can stay on my soapbox for just 1 second. Can I stay on my soapbox?
Yes.
I do want to I think one of the conversations we can have is around the expectation around changes, because I find in a live service like this, in Tiffany's world, the notion of a hot fix, which is, how would you describe to somebody who maybe doesn't understand, whenever Adam's we're doing another hot fix, what is a hot fix from a player's perspective?
So there's a lot of issues that we are able to hot fix on the server, whether it's server code or server data. And those are ones that generally we can turn around a little bit quicker. Obviously, we want to make sure that the fix is solid, doesn't break anything else in the game, that our QA team has an opportunity to run through it and ensure that if we roll it out, when we roll it out to the servers, to all of our players, that it actually improves the game and fixes the issue that we've come across. We also have the opportunity to do client fixes. Those ones are it requires an update to the actual player's client. In both cases, for the most part, they are seamless so that players can get that change while they're playing the game. I'm sure you've noticed sometimes when you're logging out that your Battle.net client will pick up an update, or you'll pick it up on your console. So the next time that you log in and play Diablo 4, you pick up that client update. Hotfixes are seamless. So as you're playing and you're doing server transitions, as you're going through the world, you'll automatically pick up that update. In both cases, should be seamless, and something that we work very, very hard on. Client fixes tend to take a little bit more time to get out to our players. We want to treat all of our players. I mean, I'm a console player myself. I know that Joe Shelley plays on console. Rod Ferguson plays on console.
And PC.
And PC. Super important that we get these fixes out to our players at the same time so that everyone that plays Diablo 4, regardless of how they're playing, can experience the same game and the same quality of experience.
And I think for the client, what we call the client, so the way you're playing on your actual device, that because we support multiple platforms, we have to often go through certification. And so that's one of the things around pacing, that we have to oftentimes pre-plan out what we're fixing. And so hot fixes are stuff we can kind of do on the fly. It doesn't require a certification pass. Again, it's meant to be seamless. So occasionally we'll have some hiccups but it's sort of philosophically, it's something that we decided as a team, that rather than bringing the whole game down for an hour to roll out a server change, we would do sort of these rolling changes. And 9 times out of 10, no issues. Occasionally, based on just the scale, we haven't worked at the scale before, and so sometimes when you're refreshing this number of servers with this number of players on it, we could hit a hiccup. And we've hit a couple, during launch that. But our intention is to keep the game up all the time and just try to. But that being said, like I said, we often want to plan well in advance because we have to QA it. It's not like we can turn. That's one of the things I feel the feedback is I have this problem. I want to see it fixed tomorrow, and you're I would love to do that for you, but we have to go through CERT and we have to QA it and we have to do all this work. And so we already have a big, real patch coming. And so that's something that's gone through certification. It's out there. It's going to address a lot of things, including performance issues. And it's so big, we're actually talking about there's the potential we may actually choose to have a maintenance window and say, like, we're going to bring the whole game down, we're going to apply this big patch, and then we're going to bring it all back up. Like, you have an artifact of said patch, do you not?
I do.
Am I ruining your agenda, by the way? Did I jump way ahead?
Slightly, but it's okay.
It's a campfire talk. It's a campfire chat.
Campfire chats. In fact, we have been working on a pretty large client patch.
Chonky patch.
It's very chonky. Chonky is the perfect way of describing it. That addresses a lot of things, and this right here is actually it's 13 pages, but it's not even done yet. But it is just an early preview of kind of what we're putting together. I have it here. We probably won't go into detail of it all, but we will have it posted, obviously, when the patch does actually hit. But we do have a lot of different topics we did want to talk about.
But which are this.
Yes.
Like, this is, we're talking about
Exactly.
stuff that actually reacting to what's going on, as opposed to things we already knew we wanted to fix.
And the other thing I wanted to at least let other people know is we were in this initial launch window, so hotfixes were coming super quick, at a rapid pace. Because we're trying to, when you have this many players hitting the game, a lot of things kind of crop up, and we were wanting to kind of get those hotfixes out. Same with the small client patches. I know a lot of people are going but it said further bug fixes and stability. A lot of that stuff is on the back end to make sure things keep up with players, and we keep stability on the actual servers as players are playing over the weekend, and we have a lot of traffic and things like that. So,
Yeah, I think that's a good point. When we say something like further bug fixes and stability, that's not include. It's not like that bug fix includes a change to Whirlwind or something.
Yeah.
It's some bug with a name that is comprehensible to our engineers got fixed, right? And so it ends up not being very useful to go into a lot of detail about those. But anytime there's something that's oh, we changed the barbarian, that we call that out.
yeah, if there's player-facing stuff, we'll most definitely end up calling that out. In regards to some at least how launch has gone and feedback that we've gotten from the community, we've heard a lot of different topics within the community itself. People just chatting with us or hitting us up on social media.
I think it's one of the interesting aspects is I wanted to create this meme of we want a balanced game where there's no meta and every build is viable, and everybody's yay, and they're we've reduced the power of this class, and what's going on? Table flip, and you're what we have a philosophy of as part of balancing the game, whether that be the world or the classes, there will be pluses and minuses that have to be applied to the game, and the notion of, oh look, I remember Destiny 2 had Loot Cave, and we're there's a Loot Cave, let's just sit here and farm loot, and we're having so much fun. It's Christmas morning all day long, and that can't persist. For the good of the game, that has to not exist at some point, right? And so that's a problem that they fixed, and you understand eventually why they did that. I think there's some of that when we have 350 million hours playing against the game, and we go across your intentions from a design perspective about how do you want players to be gaining XP and sort of growing their levels and kind of what is their path for. It felt like what we started to see was that a player pattern that was non-ideal. It was a player behavior that you wanted to sort of, that was being revealed through play, that amount of play.
Yeah, so that's generally true. The way I would talk about it is that, and we've talked about consistently throughout development, that our goal is to have a lot of choice for players,
Right.
both in terms of being able to having lots of good choices for where you're going to level or acquire loot, and also in terms of your character having lots of choices, right? And so, sometimes people will say well, can't you, anytime something is too strong, can't you just buff everyone else?
Right.
And while in theory you can do that, when you have many classes and many builds, and you have one thing that is too strong, the process of buffing everything else, A, is likely to result in more balance issues because
Right.
you're changing many, many things at once. And B, you can very quickly run into a place where you have, 65,000% on Whirlwind or something.
Right.
You know, and it can get sort of crazy.
You're always just chasing that power.
So yeah, I mean, sometimes we have to make changes. We have to nerf things sometimes.
Sure.
But our philosophy is to prioritize improving choice by looking at things that are not working and making them better. Now, it hasn't felt like that in the last 2 weeks.
Right.
Right. You know, when I came here today, I was thinking about. I don't have a shirt like this, but I thought about like getting a shirt and then writing it's time for the buffs on it.
We can make you one.
I didn't do that, but it is.
So
it
if
is
we have a
time for the
buff shirt, it
buffs.
has to be Adam.
Yeah.
You're never invited to one of these.
But seriously, you know, I think we have some things we want to
Yes.
go over here.
We do.
That the community has called out through various formats, through videos and posts.
Videos,
and-
posts on our forums, which we really appreciate. Anyone who posts on our forums, we are completely scouring our forums for feedback and so forth. Posts on social media, on Reddit, conversations that people are having in videos. You know, sometimes we have content creators that are actually creating like videos that are talking about specific topics. So we've kind of compiled a good list of like hot topics that I think that the community has been wanting to hear more about, and we do want to go through those and actually talk about them a little bit more in detail. I think probably the biggest one I think that people have been talking about the most has been around dungeons. As you guys know, like we've had a few hot fixes, and by few I mean 4 in a row. Yes,
Yep.
Totally understand. Of hot fixes where we do where we had a line where we did mention that we were reducing like elite pack levels and so forth, or adjusting them specifically in certain dungeons, with the goal to be, you know, longer dungeons having more elite packs, and of course shorter ones having, you know, less than what a longer one would specifically have. But I would say like we've really gotten to kind of like a new baseline now of
Yeah.
like where we are.
It seemed like it was a contrast thing. Like I think Joe can speak to, but like I think the expectation was, oh, nightmare dungeons are the end game. That's the place I'm going to go, you know, quote unquote farm. But right now, the normal dungeons, because of the elite density is so high, it's better to farm a normal dungeon than it is a nightmare. And so they seemed like they were kind of slightly out of whack from that perspective. I don't know if that's a technical term, slightly out of whack, but.
I've seen it many times.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. Is that accurate, or how do you feel?
Yeah, we had some cases where among side dungeons, some side dungeons had dramatically more elites than other side dungeons, and so it really felt like if you're thinking about efficiency, it only made sense to farm those.
Right.
But more broadly, I mean, you were talking about nightmare dungeons. Nightmare dungeons have. First off, actually, you know, the significant majority of our players haven't finished the campaign yet. So there are lots of players that are still playing through the campaign.
Right.
But many of the people who are watching this stream, in fact, and our dedicated players play through content much more quickly.
Right.
And have been experiencing this situation with the dungeons, right?
Sure.
So going to nightmare dungeons. Nightmare dungeons are explicitly set up to be highly replayable, right? Through the sigil affixes, through the variety of nightmare dungeons that are available, to the changes to monsters that occur inside them. And so we want them to be a great place to farm, including if you want to farm dungeons over and over. If
Right.
you want to loop dungeons, nightmare dungeons are set up to be good at doing that.
That's
right?
the intention.
Yeah. So what we're going to do there is we're going to increase the amount of XP that you get from nightmare dungeons. And our goal with this is to make nightmare dungeons more efficient to do than side dungeons.
Right.
Because they're designed to be more replayable.
And does that take into account, like, nightmare dungeons have essentially a travel time to get to them?
Right. So this is a great point. So in order to, when you think about efficiency, if you think about XP per hour or XP per minute, And we actually have telemetry on this, so we can see what it looks like. You can't just look at the XP that you're getting from the Nightmare Dungeon, because you have to spend some of the time traveling to that Nightmare Dungeon. And in fact, Nightmare Dungeons are a variety of distances away from the nearest waypoint or teleport. So it actually varies depending on which Nightmare Dungeon you're going to. And so that can also have the effect, if you're thinking about the efficiency aspect of it, of XP per hour or loot per hour, of sort of making it hard to justify choosing a Nightmare Dungeon that's far from a teleport point.
Sure.
So the second thing that we're going to do here is we're going to modify the way that sigils work so that they teleport you to Nightmare Dungeons on use.
So they teleport you, or do they create a place to a waypoint to the dungeon?
They will create a waypoint that allows you to teleport. But yes, you'll be able to teleport to. That's an important distinction.
Right.
But the effect is that you'll be able to teleport to your Nightmare Dungeons, and you'll be able to loop from the end of a Nightmare Dungeon into your next Nightmare Dungeon. If you want to loop them again, you may have to leave the Nightmare Dungeon using an interface, but you'll be able to go from Nightmare Dungeon to Nightmare Dungeon without traveling between them.
Right.
And that allows us to have the XP, calculate the XP buff to make sure that those are the most efficient to do, because we're removing the travel time aspect of it.
Okay, so we're improving the rewards from Nightmare Dungeons to make them more what the intention was. That's the place you farm.
Yeah.
We're removing the need to have a travel time, because a waypoint will appear and you and your party can go there, so it shortens it.
Right.
Like the waypoint one in particular sounds like a reasonably large change. So from a player perspective, what should expectations be about, hey, that sounds awesome, or at least for me, I'm responding, that sounds awesome. I don't know if they agree yet, but I think that sounds awesome. So what kind of timing, what range of timing are you thinking?
It is, you know, Tiffany was just talking about like the kinds of things that we can do very quickly and easily.
This isn't supposed to be wonderful.
It's a little, but this is something that's really important to many of our most dedicated players. And so we're working very hard on this right now, actually, and yesterday as well, to get it in before Season 1 launches.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so I know Tiffany and the live ops team I know have been working really tough on working a lot to make sure that we can get specific updates before Season 1 and scheduling those out and everything. So yeah, the Nightmare Dungeon changes that Joe was just talking about, the goal is to have that out before Season 1 so players can actually experience it and use sigils to really teleport to Nightmare Dungeons and use that as a way of kind of incentivizing. And with Nightmare Dungeons XP being buffed, and it should be the way that players end up needing to want to kind of grind or farm specific things, they have the Nightmare Dungeon options.
So, and then for people who are maybe not following along all the time, right now Season 1, we're saying mid to late July.
Mid to late July.
So we're saying that this change could happen anytime between, in the next 4 weeks or whatever.
Correct.
So that's what we're focused on. But again, I think that the waypoint teleportation, we have to get that right. There's a lot that goes on there. So there's a bunch of QA we have to do to make sure we don't mess with parties and everything else, right? So we want to go as quickly as possible, but we also have to go as safely as possible. The last thing we want to do is rush something. So I use the phrase, don't shake the jello, which is a notion of your jello mold is trying to set, and if you keep poking it, it won't ever stabilize, it won't ever set. And that's kind of the thing we worry about here, is that with all that, what are we at, hotfix 9 we've put out so far?
We're actually at 11.
We are at 11.
Sorry, I missed one. And with also our client patches, we're constantly sort of poking, and if you do that without proper QA and proper testing to make sure you're not shaking something out of alignment, because I think we've had that where we've maybe rushed a patch and then that caused something else to slightly not go the way we want. So that's something we want to be as responsive as possible, but we also want to be as safe as possible and make sure we're not causing other issues.
Yeah, I mean,
shout out to Hotfix 11 for fixing some of the things that we
may have broken the previous one.
the teleport should take you to the dungeon and not under the world or
Yes.
in front of Lilith.
Major shout out to our QA team because we have put out, I think, as you just said, 11 hotfixes and I want to say 8 or 9 client patches. So definite kudos to them.
Yes.
Speaking of season 1,
Yep.
I am looking forward to it. I'm a Necro player as well, I believe Rod is, so you know, definitely looking through that chonky patch to make sure that my class gets buffed, as Joe said. But you know, I've been collecting
Now, you
renown.
just promised. Do you realize what you just did?
Yes.
That
This is
you
why I
just
need to
promised
you
necro
know,
buffs
well,
to
now
people.
Joe has to do it
I
because
know.
I said
Is that
it.
how it works?
Yes, it is how it
Oh,
works.
okay, great.
I didn't tell him that, but now he knows. I'm looking forward to season 1. I am curious because I think a lot of the community is curious, you know, will I have to recollect all those altars of Lilith? Do I get to carry over those primary stat bonuses that I'm earning? What about my map? Don't really want to have to rediscover it. So Rod, what's season 1 going to look like for me when I roll a rogue?
When you roll a rogue, well, I mean, one of the cool things you and I both experience a lot with our necro play is the blighted corpse problem, right?
Yes.
Which is the, I think
I
Josh
don't know if
calls
it's
them.
one of the cool things.
Well, no, it is a cool thing. I think Josh calls them corpse farts, but like he's like, I'm trying to get
All
through
right.
this with corpse farts. I don't. It's not my favorite term, but anyway, like, but we know that the opaqueness of that effect is sometimes can be an explosion waiting for you underneath there, and you can die. because
It
you
is
didn't
a
see it.
bug, yes. That is one of the things
See
we
how
are
it-
fixing.
I'm just like
Yes.
judoed that question.
Yes, you
back
totally
to
did.
her.
And I actually care a lot about this because I use Blighted Corpse on my Necro. That is included in one of our upcoming patches. It is a bug. I know there was some discussion of like, is this intentional? It's not intentional. We will be fixing it and making it a little bit easier in general to be able to see which of the dangerous effects on the ground, making sure that's always readable to the player. So making sure our sort order is correct. You know, if there's a Fire Enchanted, which is it's the affix that always gets me, that I can definitely see it because right now with all the corpse farts on the ground,
See how easy it is to just say it?
now that is canon. I can. It's very difficult for me to see a lot of the affixes or some of the enemy or PvP fire on the ground. So
Sure.
looking forward to those changes. But yes, going back to season 1.
Renown. Yeah, I think the big thing that we're seeing, you know, one of the big questions I think, especially new players, if you've played Diablo 3 before, you're familiar with the seasonal kind of reset. That idea of like, oh, it's a new season. There may be new balances, especially like in Diablo 3, they changed how sets work and all these sorts of things. There's an interesting like, oh, I want to go back and experience this, whatever new changes are in the season or new mechanics. And that's still true in Diablo 4, that idea that there's that sense of progression and going back and trying something new, experiencing the new mechanics in the world from a new place where, because otherwise it becomes this huge sort of power creep. But obviously, part of the feedback is people now are starting to complete the campaign and they're starting to look forward to season 1 coming mid to late July. They're wondering, like, wait, when we talk about resets, how do I think about the renown system in particular? And so one of the things, what will happen is that I think we started off in one place and we're kind of ending up in another place, which is kind of interesting. Is we started off from hey, we want as much of that feeling of progression as possible. So rediscovering things isn't that bad because you're like, oh, I get to do this really cool. But I think we're starting to feel with alt characters that notion of, oh, the fog of war between characters doesn't feel great. And like the Lilith altars doesn't necessarily feel great. And so that's something we're going to do. And we'll be continuing to evaluate what should and shouldn't be reset as part of that. You know, much like once you complete the campaign on one character on your account, you can skip campaign for every character from there on through every season. And I think basically, I guess I won't promise expansions, but I believe expansions do. Not to lock stuff in too early. But that notion that you only have to complete, that's kind of the thinking we have. So right now for Renown, what we're talking about is as we go into season 1, when the amount of the fog of war that you've lifted on your map, the amount of the map that you've exposed going into the season in the Eternal Realm will be what you see in the season. So you don't have to go and reveal the map again. And the only capital city waypoints, I think, will be active, much like it is now. So, but you'll see them. They'll just be gray. So because there's so much renown you get for claiming one, we still want you to go claim that waypoint. And then there's also the Altars of Lilith, which is basically, those will stay as well. You don't have to rediscover them every season. And that's always been true, the notion around the benefits you get from a Altar of Lilith, like +2 intelligence or +2 dex, those stay with you forever, much like the renown system of the extra potion charge or the extra obol capacity, those stay with you too. You don't have to go get those skill points, go get those potion charges. Those go with you. And what's kind of cool is that what we're talking about is we'll preload you that renown. So, right, so if I could get, I'll make up a number, this is totally made up, 1,000 renown through Fog of War clearance, when I start up Season 1, my map will be clear like it is in the Eternal Realm, and I'll already have 1,000 renown in my...
Right, your renown screen will still show, fog, this many areas of the map to be discovered.
Right.
It will just give you credit for the ones that you already discovered, and that will translate into starting the season if you have been playing previously on a character with some amount of renown.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. And our intention, so those are the base of the two major, you get credit for. Like we're going to...
Altars and fog.
Altars and fog. So side quests, those are something that's still reset. But we're looking into the future, maybe that's something else we could potentially...
Potentially, I mean, it's something that I think we'll continue to evaluate. Like, some things are fun to do every season, and some things are, after you do them a few times, you feel like, why do I have to do this again? And I mean, I think that's something that it's pretty clear on exploring the map and the Altars of Lilith.
Yeah.
I think it's less clear on some of those other things.
I know as one personal preference, I mean, when I skip campaign on a new character, I kind of use the side quest to kind of create my own campaign playthrough. Like it gives me a little more direction. So I actually, again, one person, but I actually like being able to play through the side stories again.
Yeah. And so and just to re-clarify on the Altars of Lilith, obviously players who and how it works right now is if you collect an Altar of Lilith, you get the stat bonuses or whatever bonuses that you have, and those carry over. But now with the additional changes, it will be showcased. The ones that you've actually visited already will now showcase on your map already. So it ends up at least covering off of that, of course. And then, as Rod mentioned, the Fog of War items will be kind of carried over, or not carried over, but removed from as you kind of create new characters. And in terms of timing, I guess for some of these, when were we kind of looking for?
That's season 1, right? So it would be...
Yeah, we're looking to get that for season 1. An interesting point here is that that change will also affect alts after it goes in.
Oh, nice. Perfect. Yeah.
So alts after season 1 will have the same benefit.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Very cool. Well, I know I'm slowly getting through my list here. Pull out the cookies.
What I want, I was going to say, you want some energy cookies, you want some s'mores? I think one of the things that I'm especially encountering too is in the dungeons, when you're going through and clearing dungeons, probably at least the bottom row of my inventory tends to be the gems I've collected along the way. And I know that creates some tension, in terms of when to go back and those sorts of things. So I know they're the quick answer is always I want a gem tab, or how do I put a different place to put those? But it sounds like we're doing something and we're thinking about it differently.
Yeah, we're looking at inventory tension, essentially, things that fill up your... It's the design. Yeah, it's
Nice.
a design term. Anyway, it's basically stuff that clutters up your inventory.
Sure.
And important, awesome stuff that we built and has all kinds of interesting gameplay, but has the effect of taking up lots of space.
Sure.
Like gems.
Perfect segue.
I got there.
We got there. For example, random idea, gems.
Like gems. This is why it's a campfire chat. We're establishing the baseline expectations.
Yeah,
We should just go low.
Yeah, we
While
can only
we're
go
not
so
answering a
low.
question, and I still haven't got these cookies open, so I'm making noise
so-
while you're thinking.
When we think about gems,
Still didn't get it.
there are many colors of gems, there are many qualities of gems, and this can have the effect of taking up lots of inventory space. So what we're looking to do, and this is a longer, we talked about fixes that have different time horizons. This is a longer term one. We're looking to get it in around season 2.
Oh, okay.
The idea is to change the way you acquire gems so that they are show up in your materials or currency tab rather than in inventory.
Oh, like when you collect veiled crystals. So rather than it
Right.
even being a thing that you collect in an inventory, it's now just part of your materials.
Right, and then the way that will work is you go to craft your gem in the same way that you do today, and you just use a certain amount of that material. So it's similar to the amount of equivalent like actual gem inventory slots that you're using now,
Right.
but as materials, and you can use that to craft the gem that goes into
It's kind of a win-win because it's saving you inventory space, but it's also saving you stash space. Because right now, I'm just like filling up my stash with gems.
Yeah.
But now, if it's just materials I'm carrying, but like something there's been discussion around while we're on materials is that there's this notion of, oh, I didn't understand there was caps. Like, I am not as hardcore to have 10,000 veiled crystals, but I know some people out there are, and they're realizing like, oh, you can only carry 10,000, and there isn't a way to put veiled crystals into the stash or whatever to do with it. Like, what is the thinking around caps? Because sometimes it's like, oh, we were trying to force you to go do an action. We like much like the opals thing now, like, oh, you go roll something because your more opals are falling, but. I don't think that it doesn't feel like that's the same for veiled crystal. As an example, veiled crystal, like how do you think about caps and materials?
Yeah, the caps, the materials aren't. There's no particular reason to cap the veiled crystals at 10,000. We're just gonna make that bigger.
Yeah. So we're upping the material caps for that, which we've seen a lot of players, especially players that are like level 90 plus. As you're going through dungeons, you're obviously gonna naturally just pick up a lot of gear, and you're gonna salvage a lot of that as well. So you're gonna get to those specific caps that are currently in the game. So I know a lot of those changes are going to be really beneficial to players who put in a decent amount of hours on those characters, or even if they're already at max level at 100 and they're still farming gear or looking for gear on those characters.
And the time horizon on the cap, lifting of the caps?
I think we have that in
That's actually
that's coming
before
season
season
one,
one.
right?
So that one we will be changing before season
That's
one.
right.
And it'll be incorporated in some and an update.
A future planned
Future
update
planned update.
before season
Because
one.
you love them. You just love rolling those out.
Just like sweating. I know this has actually been an interesting conversation also that I did want to bring up is we've had a lot of people, especially like content creators and others that have kind of been a little confused on how things like resistances actually currently work within the game. I think there's a lot of people that are actually prioritizing other benefits on gear or stats right now over resistances because they're a little confused on how it works, or they feel that it may not be working at all.
I certainly do that with gems. Like I certainly would rather use my emerald for thorns than like whatever the reduction, like plus 14% resistance, whatever. Like I know my instincts are to go to the more tangible thing initially, and I guess sometimes it can be subtle that people don't pick up on the one-to-one. Like, hey, I know exactly how this is affecting my play. Like, is that?
Yeah, the resistance case is one where the system has a lot of different inputs, and there are some of those have multiplicative scaling, and we have sort of some things we want to accomplish with that system too. We want to encourage players to get more resistances as they go up higher in world tiers, which is why there's an effect on your resistances as you go up in world tiers.
Oh, that might be clear to some people. Is like that. So basically, as you move up in world tier, your current level of resistances will get sort of
right,
and so that you have to kind of reacquire that resistance.
Yeah, and what we're seeing right now is that because of the way all of these, there's also an effect where your armor provides physical resistance and also provides half that amount of elemental resistances. And because all of these things are interacting in a complex way, it can be hard for people to figure out exactly how they work.
Right.
But regardless of that, the way that it is working in practice is meaning that resistances are less valuable than we would like them to be.
Sure.
And because it's a fairly complex interaction, this is something that's going to take a little bit more time to sort of dial in the right the right solution for.
Right. But they're still valuable in the short term. It's not like they're like not worth it at all.
Yeah,
Like,
what
it's
happens is as you get up into higher amounts of resistance and higher world tiers, you're seeing the value drop off more than we intend for
Got
it.
it.
And so that's where we're going to see some changes.
Right. And so because we need to go slow on that kind of a complex change, what are you thinking from a time horizon on that?
That's going to be something that we see around season 2.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's worth also managing expectations. The reason why you hear things like, hey, we found something, or we're hearing something, and we're talking already about season 2, which again, we're talking about quarterly seasons, so that's going to be in the fall. Like, why wouldn't you get into season 1? I don't understand. Well, we're like pretty much finishing up season 1 right now. In order to be able to put it through certification, the way that we do our release candidate testing, like we need to be ahead of the game. And the fact that we're only, let's say it's mid to late July and we're already sort of mid-June, so we're like 4 weeks away. It can take a couple weeks to get through cert and everything else. So you kind of have to be out in front of this stuff. And so that's what I was trying to set in one of the official dev streams and managing expectations. When we find something, we're like, it's not a hot fix worthy thing, or something we can't even hot fix because it's not just like changing a variable on a server. It's something that is a complex system that requires real work. It may come a little bit later than you're thinking because of the fact that we have to be so ahead of the game in developing this content for you. So that's why you're hearing stuff like season 2 means season 1 is pretty much done. I mean, it's done from a development perspective, and now it's in the QA and certification phase. So that's why we talk about season 2 as the next sort of window to put stuff out like this.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people are going. I'm seeing chat now going like, why not season 1? Why not season 1? And it's the perfect explanation for it, because in the end of the day, you have to button something up to get it ready for people to actually play it, and we obviously have to do a lot of testing for it, certification and so forth. So just a reminder for everyone, like, development is a process. It's
An iterative process.
An iterative process for sure.
That's also a good point. When we think about seasons, one of the things that we think is most important is delivering new content.
Right.
Because that is new stuff for everyone. Like, if we want to make sure that every season is delivering new content, and then on top of that, bring in important fixes, bring in some quality of life improvements. And so, I know that I've seen some lists, like people have helpfully made like some lists, like here are a bunch of quality of life fixes that we would like, or that would help me, as a player. So I think what you'll see is that over time, as seasons roll out, you're going to see those. Like we've been talking about with season 1 and season 2, you're going to continue to see those things. You're not going to see a season that's like, sorry, we didn't
Bare
make any
bones,
content, but here's a bunch of fixes.
Yeah, and
because we think the content is really important.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Is like Diablo 4 just launched. And we have a lot of stuff planned for the game.
Yeah, and I've had some comments on Twitter where people are like, well, D3 has this thing and D4 doesn't have this thing, and I'm like, well, D3 has been out there for 10 years, iterating and improving, and like D4 has been out there for 10 days. And so like that doesn't mean it's not going to show up. It doesn't mean the iteration and evolution of these things aren't going to continue. Like we're going to keep evolving the game, as fast as we can, and as safely as we can through seasons and hot fixes and patches and expansions. So just because there's something not there today doesn't mean there's no intention to put it there in the future.
Yeah, we definitely evaluate the level of effort and the amount of risk for all of the changes, and that's kind of how we determine, is this hot fixable? Like, is it something that needs to be fixed and addressed on the live environment right now? Is it something that would be better to wait until our next planned release vehicle, whether that's season 1 or season 2, throwing out some production terms there. And we want to just, like Joe was saying, it's super important that we deliver quality seasons with tons of great content to our players. So it's also super important that we don't rush something out and break the game where it becomes not playable, not viable, or not so fun anymore. So definitely taking all the feedback. We have a very, very long list of things that we want to get to. And like Rod was saying, I worked on D3 for many years, and we improved it over time. And I'm actually looking forward to the point where we can start putting in a lot of those improvements that people are asking for to get it to a super, super polished game that makes everybody happy. It's pretty close.
Agreed. I know one thing that has been kind of a hot topic within the community because a lot of players are playing hardcore, and we have seen some, whether it could be a disconnect or a player might be dying, randomly on their own accord, or maybe they have a service issue or something from their side. I know that there's like a lot of questions related to disconnection, death protection, and so forth. I know it's a thing that we've been looking at. We've been looking at everyone's clips, even the painful ones where we're like, oh no, that's awful and so forth. But I know we've been looking at potentially doing some work on that from that end.
Yeah, so there are a few cases here. There are, we've seen some cases where a hardcore hero died during teleport, which is a bug. We've seen potentially some bugs with situations where you should be immune, but you might have died. We're investigating both of those cases, and once we have identified the root cause, we'll tackle fixes for that. You also mentioned cases where the player disconnects, right? These can be some of the most frustrating situations for a hardcore player because in many cases it is completely outside of your control. It could be an issue with anywhere between you and the server, right?
Yeah.
So those can be especially frustrating. And we have already a mechanism in the game that allows players to escape from boss fights that has very strict controls on it in terms of being a consumable item that's a fairly rare drop, which is called the Scroll of Escape. This is a hardcore only item. It's a consumable scroll. You can use it at any time and teleport to safety. You can bind it to your mouse wheel. It's important to bind it to the...
It's very important to bind it. I do recommend binding it so that you don't run into an issue where you might potentially use like an emote
instead of your. I mean, you go out with style. I mean, like
Yes.
you're going out emoting while you're being killed.
So we have this mechanism already to allow players to try out something that's extremely difficult in hardcore, and that allows us to have things in hardcore that are very challenging.
Right.
Because without something like this, as a hardcore hero who's invested hundreds of hours, why would I go and do something where I might die?
Yeah.
There's certainly lots of risk there, and it's very exciting.
Right.
But I mean, I could just get a little stronger first,
Sure.
right? So we think that the scroll allows for even more exciting moments.
Scroll of nope. You're like, nope.
And this is the place where, because it has these controls in terms of being consumable and being a rare drop,
Right.
this is the place where we want to add disconnect protection. So basically, the way that this will work is, if you get disconnected, and this is essentially for any reason, and
So
and
like,
I
even
wanna,
if your cat pulls the Wi-Fi router out of the wall.
Now I want to clarify that
Because a dog would never do
it's
that.
not.
That's true. Only cats.
The disconnect case is a very complex situation in terms of determining what's happening.
Sure.
So this is not perfect situation.
Okay.
I'm
Lightning
not
strike on
going
the
to
telephone
guarantee
pole may not trigger.
100%. But what should happen is that when we detect that you've disconnected, if you have one of these scrolls of escape in your inventory, it will trigger, even though you weren't there to trigger it. It will consume the scroll, so you can't just do this as much as you want.
Right.
And it will teleport you to safety.
Right.
So when you log back in after the lightning has subsided, you should be in town.
Should be.
Just have scrolls because they are a limited resource. Like obviously, like
Well, part of it, you have to stop abuse, right? You don't
Exactly.
want people like using disconnects
Yeah.
as ways to do things. It's the same thing, I think, when we were talking about the the sigil change is that one of the concerns, if we didn't put the right rules around it, is that if a sigil automatically teleported me somewhere, I could use that to escape hard content. You
Sure.
know? And so that we always have to. That's part of it. It's not everything is intuitively like, oh, I instantly get it, go do that. You have to go like, wait, there's a bunch of edge cases and things that this can be abused, and we have to manage that too. So. Okay, that sounds good. So I'm Mr. What's the time window on that, Joe? That's my role now on this. Campfire chat is Rod. Like, when are you getting that done?
I think this is a selfish
That
question.
is also a season 2 time frame for the disconnect protection.
Yeah.
Some of the bugs that I mentioned earlier in terms of cases where immunity, there could be a problem with immunity, or a teleport, a death during loading screen or something. Those are things that we're investigating right now.
It could be hotfix, but
it could be sooner than that.
Yeah, those could be sooner, and then the scroll of escape with disconnection protection would end up being season 2. So,
Okay.
cool. All right, I know I got a few more. Sorry, I know I want to make sure we hit on all these topics. This is obviously really important for the community, and I know that they want to hear about them and so forth. But
Why are my caches higher level than me?
yes, that is a very popular one. Why are my caches higher level than me? I can't open my
even
cache.
open the
I
cache.
killed
I
the
wanna know
world
what's in the
boss,
cache.
but I can't open the cache.
What's in the cache, Joe?
This is a bug. So in a before season 1, in an upcoming
A
fix.
planned patch.
Yes, that's right.
In the plan patch?
Plan patch.
You will be able to
in the
open
13 pager? Is that what we're doing?
in a planned patch. you will be able to open caches from world bosses. Now, the gear that's in those caches may still be higher level,
At least
but
you can
there's
sell it. Or
and there's a variety of things you can salvage.
Right.
Some of the stuff in the caches isn't gear. You'll be able to use that immediately.
But at least you can open it and see what's inside.
Yeah.
And it gives you something to work toward. You're like, oh, this thing that's amazing is 3 levels higher than me. I'm going to go get up to that level and use that gear, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
I know. So scaling is a huge topic. I'm just diving right
Is
in.
it maybe too huge? Is that where you're going? What are we doing?
Well, scaling is a big topic. I think players have talked a lot about, like, hey, the world scaling with
right.
you and the sense of power that you have. I think one thing that we actually talked about earlier, I think addresses some of the scaling questions we have, which was like nightmare dungeons are that way of also feeling more powerful as you're kind of progressing through them, because you can obviously go into higher level nightmare dungeons, and you'll be able to slowly but surely, get your way through higher and higher level versions of that. The other thing, though, I think, and I've seen this a lot personally myself, where people have been going like, hey, I might be like a level 25 druid, but level 18 gear is dropping. And there's a lot of like attachment to item level, or to the actual level required.
Focus on the wrong number?
Yeah,
Yep.
as opposed to the item power. And I think it's a topic I wanted to bring up, just because item power is actually really the number that people should be really focusing on, as opposed to specifically item level, because there are points where you will actually potentially find a higher item level requirement with a lower item power itself. And that's one thing I think that will help with people when they're focusing on trying to become more powerful, is really going for item power, focusing on that specific number in itself, because I know a lot of people have been discussing it online and everything.
And that's what I guess when you upgrade at the vendor, like the item power is what's getting upgraded.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of nice sometimes that you can get a slightly higher item power on a slightly lower level item, because it gives that lower level character a bit of a bump and those sorts of things.
Yeah, the item, the required level for an item does loosely correlate with the power of the item in most cases, but there are many situations where that is not accurate.
Right.
And so it's better to look, as Adam was saying, at the item power of an item.
I mean, Adam brought up Druid. So one of the things I know I hear quite a bit about is there's a thing where you get into uniques and discussions that like barb uniques are falling for druids, and so what's the issue there?
Yeah, there are a couple bugs where certain barb uniques can drop for druids that we're fixing. and that's going to come in before. I see where you're going here.
I know. You know what I was going to say. So when's that happening, Joe?
It's going to come in before season 1.
Okay.
In a planned patch.
So within the next 4 weeks.
But when
Ish.
I'm playing a class, Joe, can I expect to occasionally see uniques or legendaries drop for other classes?
Yeah, you will. That's a really good point. It's these changes are not. You will never ever see anything for another class.
Right.
It's that there are some specific Barb uniques that were meant to drop only for Barb, but due to a bug are also dropping for Druid, and we're correcting those.
Got it. Okay. Awesome.
And I know we just mentioned this, but in a future update, don't hate me, Ted. A future hotfix is what we'll say for right now. A future hotfix is when we plan on
Yeah,
this.
you're right. You're right. That's right.
Social features, looking for group, looking like type of features has been a topic. Some people who may not be in like a clan or something like that, or choose not to actually join a clan, or maybe some of their friends or their normal friends are usually logged off during a specific time. Trying to find other people to maybe like join in with you during dungeons and stuff like that can be a little bit of a challenge. We've been hearing a lot of feedback on that. I know that the team obviously is looking into future social features for the game itself. We just need more iteration time, more time to actually think about how we want that to actually be available, how accessible it should be, and so forth for players to be able to jump into some dungeons with maybe randos or something like that if they want to, if they're looking for it. I know it's a topic that a lot of people have been talking about, but we are looking into it in terms of items.
I think crossplay adds complexity too. Like that's
Yes.
why, again, it's one of those things where you want to make the right choices and take the time to do it right. And it did feel like as a social features, it felt like it's one of those great places to evolve and iterate into. So I think that's a large bucket of features that I could see as we continue to improve quality of life over all the seasons. I could see like social features are just going to get better and better and better over time.
Yep. And the other big thing that I know that some PC players have experienced have been a little bit of some like performance and like stability items. It's a team that we have like this graphics engineering team that has been like hardcore like slamming into the problem itself and trying to figure out exactly all the different cases and all the different scenarios. We actually do have some fixes and some items that we're addressing here and some upcoming client patches that will be hitting players. So it should help out with a lot of those specific scenarios or those instances that players are actually running into. And again, if you guys actually have any of those issues on your end, feel free to post those in our forums. We scour those, all throughout the day. It's customer service, it's QA, it's community, and we're actually providing all this information over to those teams. Giving as much information as possible is huge, as opposed to like, hey, my computer's not performing very well while I'm playing Diablo 4. If you can give us, extra information, computer specs, etc., where it may have occurred, and details and so forth, it
The
helps
DX
us a lot.
diag on the forums is really helpful.
Yes.
Because a lot of times, sometimes there's expectations around how much memory do I actually need, how much VRAM do I actually need, and sometimes actually because of the way we do seamless server transitions, sometimes if there's if we're doing some maintenance or there's something going on, you could see what you call rubber banding could actually be just a slight delay in the server transition and not actually be related to the game's performance. It may actually just be a networking handoff between servers. So there is no one blanket. I think there's a lot of we run on very low end, which like being able to go all the way down to Gen 8 to going to very high, and each one of them have their own different sets of requirements. And we know that by setting your settings correctly can help you a lot too. Like playing with what is this texture level? Does it help or hurt? Those kinds of things. But that 13-page document that Adam has in his hand does contain a lot of performance improvements as well. So, but we feel really good about where we are, but we do know that there are some issues with specific cases, and the more information we get about them, the more likely we are to be able to address them.
Yep, most definitely. I know, there's a ton of different bug fixes and so forth that are still coming down the line, and we plan on addressing all of those. Again, continue using our forums to actually give us that info. I know we do want to take some questions from chat and so forth from Twitch chat. I will do my best to actually announce names. I will announce the names so people know that they can go back into chat and see the names and not go like, oh my gosh,
You made up those
you made up
names.
these
Those
names
aren't
and
real
so
names.
forth. And I will note that was not our interview. So that like we
sure
did
you know
not
this one?
we did not come up with that question.
Pretty good.
But yeah, I do want to take some questions from chat itself.
Joe, you
As we're kind of like,
I will.
I had one. I was actually kind of disappointed.
Well, you know, you have
participate.
high expectations.
I
he eats
wasn't a
Outback.
So you're saying you wouldn't want another one?
Outback is so good. Tiff and I have this thing about Outback Steakhouse. It's fantastic. I know, I'm okay.
He needs to read the questions.
Yes,
Oh,
I do
okay.
need to read the questions. I do plan on going through at least some of the questions and continue asking questions as they're coming in. We actually have the community team is actually going through. Huge shout out to the community team. They're in the chat and they're actually going through and polling questions so that I can see them because chat is moving very fast. Let's see. In terms of, let's see.
You didn't start with the name.
Oh yeah, I need to start with the name. I'm sorry. This is a party play question, and it's from, oh gosh, I have to pronounce the names. Necrologics says.
Why is that so hard? Necrologics.
Well, I'm hoping it sounds.
Why are you
like that.
sounding it out like a 4-year-old? The necrologics. Why is that so hard?
I mean, it's like logics or something. Can we teleport to people without going to town first? Is that can be an option in the future?
So we're carefully looking at the teleporting. We want it to be easy to meet up with friends. The waypoint in town is our normal way to move to places.
I don't know that everybody knows this, by the way, because I've had to explain it to people. That it's actually, once you know what it is, like I get if you know it, you're saying like, can I optimize it? But if you don't know about it, like it's really cool that when you join your friend's game, I'm giving Joe time to eat his s'mores. When you join your friend's game, you might be in a separate place of the map than they are. If you go to the capital city or any of the capital cities, they will have a portal to them waiting to the side. So you were like, oh, I want to join your game. Oh, where are you? Oh, I'm somewhere over here. Just hit down on your D-pad. Then you're next to a portal that has their name on it. You click on it and now, or press A, and then you're with them. And so it's been great at playing with parties where you just go like, hey, just press down on your D-pad, jump in the portal, and you're with us. And so I get that it's not like a direct, but it's like it's a layover. It's a you have one stop on your way to where you're going. Anyway, so I interrupted your answer to give you time to eat your cookie, but are you thinking about optimizing so you can do more direct teleport?
It's something we'll keep an eye on.
Okay.
We aren't planning to change that right now, but it's this, as Tiffany was saying earlier, this is a game where we are continuing to support it and provide things for years to come.
Sure.
And that will mean that the game evolves over that time as well.
Yep.
We have a question from Old Greg's Place. I think that's an easy name.
That was a good one.
Yeah. There's an underscore after Greg's, though.
You don't have to
but,
pronounce
yeah,
it.
I
It's
don't
silent.
want to go like place.
Underscore.
Are you guys planning to buff any kind of resource generation, be it from passive or gear?
So we have a variety of buffs coming in a future patch to many things
Oh, you
across
just
many
lit up the
classes.
internet now. Thanks for that. I'm just saying you alluded to buffs, but we're not being specific. So now it's going to be a lot of
I mean,
speculation, which is
That's
great.
true. It's in the top secret document that Adam has.
Yes,
talking
yeah, a lot of this.
Okay.
Builds, including builds that use that have issues with resource generation, should keep an eye out for things that address that. I want to be careful here though, because resource generation is one of those stats that can very quickly invalidate resource use entirely.
Okay. Yeah.
It's very easy to end up in a situation where you have resource generation that exceeds any possible resource costs. And while that can be fun in certain situations, like it can be fun to have situations where you feel like you're breaking the game, if it's generally true for everyone, the game ends up being less interesting because you have fewer interesting choices.
Yeah. There's no trade-offs. Yeah.
There's a lot of people still mentioning mob density and so forth in chat, and I do want to just at least clarify to them because like obviously we made tweaks and so forth, and we talked about this earlier, but we made tweaks in terms of like elite mob packs and dungeons and so forth. But we now have established a baseline. And that from that baseline, like we move up. It's not a this like we're gonna continue going down or something like that. So
Joe and I had this conversation recently. Just like it's a combination, and correct me if I get this wrong, but it's not just about like as we think about nightmare dungeons and rewards. It's not always going to be like this one monster is now worth 1 million experience points. There may be times where you want that to be 5 monsters that are worth 200,000 experience points. Like density is a factor of XP per minute, and as well as the actual value of the individual monsters, and so that'll be something that you all are picking knobs on.
It's something we're continuing to look at. To clarify, the changes to XP that you'll see before Season 1 will increase the XP that you're getting per monster, per elite monster in Nightmare Dungeons.
Right.
It won't increase the total number of monsters in Nightmare Dungeons. That also can also called the density. But that is something that, as a result of the changes that we had to establish a baseline, we do have the ability to tune in the future.
Right.
Yep. Are you guys planning to continue quarterly update style?
Name? Who's asking?
Oh, sorry. Nupu Games. Are you planning to continue to the quarterly update style for upcoming expansions and systems or such? I personally love the updates. That's something to look forward to for every quarter since BlizzCon 2019. We will still be having a lot of developer update live streams. And those, like for instance, our next one will be about Season 1 when you guys do actually.
I kind of, so I'll speak as one person. I kind of like, not necessarily, well, Campfire chat aside, I kind of like the more active stream to a 9-page blog personally, and so having dev streams where we can show cool features and talk about them and interact a little bit more versus go read this novel. Like I like them, I love what we did, I love the transparency because we couldn't necessarily do streams before, but if I had to choose between an 8-page blog and a 45-minute stream, I would choose this stream, but that's just me.
And we still will have blogs around like seasons and announcements and so forth. That's still a thing. So expect to see more live streams, of course, and more campfire chats and everything related to that. Will we get the expanded option to change our character's appearance within the game? Oh, got it. Guts Claymore asked this question. Thank you, Guts. Will we get more options to change our character's appearance within the game? Don't want to make a new character just to change my character's face, hairstyle, etc.
So there are some options for re-customizing your character through the wardrobe. You can't change everything about the character there. That's something that we'll continue to look at ways that we can improve over time. You can also expect to see new options for markings and jewelry and things like that, and obviously armor and things.
In the shorter term, there'll probably be more. When you do a character create, there'll be more options. Like as we go through, but the notion of actually like once you've rolled your character and you're level 60, right now because you can't like change, say, your hairstyle. That's probably later down the road. That's not our biggest thing. We want to do is get more hairstyles into the character creator before we're actually is more higher priority than the ability to change your hair after the fact.
Yeah, but we do. I mean, I can go and get a haircut and have a different hairstyle. I don't have to roll a new me. So I understand. I understand.
Some of us would like to roll a new me if I had to get my haircut.
I understand the question, the desire, the goal.
Oh no, and we all agree with the goal. We're just saying in terms of priorities.
Are we going to add a completed side quest tab?
Who's asking?
Who's asking?
Oh, sorry, I'm so bad at this. It's because
at least we all agree on something.
Well, it's like in a different font color, and you just like immediately move off from it. And it's a really hard name. Burn 1 N9 M4N. There we go. I'm just going to read it out like that because I'm not going to butcher the name.
You put the forethought to actually look at those elite spellings in case it actually says something you shouldn't say out loud. Have you thought about it?
Well, if I just say it by number or whatever as opposed to saying
safe.
that, then I'm okay. Are you going to add a completed side quest tab to the journal?
We want to improve the things that the journal, or that not necessarily the journal specifically, but that can be tracked through the UI over time to allow more situations where maybe you see something in the game and you want to go back and look at it in the future over time. That's future plans.
I mean, the thing too, I think part of what's driving that, which I totally get that makes total sense what they're asking, but you don't need to do all side quests to complete your renown for that area. Like you can do
That's
it through
also
other
true.
things, right?
Yeah.
So though there's a completionist notion of, because we have some surprise side quests that you can't track. So the notion of, oh, I killed a mob, it dropped a thing,
Right.
and there's no way to know that on the map. And right now, there's no way to say, oh, I'm missing that sword falling one, and people could go like, oh, go kill that wolf that drops the sword or whatever. So but if your desire for being a completionist around side quests is for renown, you can actually complete renown without doing all the side quests.
And then, this is kind of a similar question, and I think this kind of falls across like quality of life. This is from Java Jinx. Are there planned quality of life improvements like search functions in the stash or for specific dungeons? I will tell you, like, again, this is another, like, these are features that will obviously be looked at, and, you know, the game is going to improve over time as we go from season to season. Lots of quality of life items will end up kind of appearing. We'll be evaluating them all as they kind of come in. I'm going to take one last question, which is...
And who's it from?
Who's it from? And this one I think is just a clarification from people. This is from Nexian. It says, can you just re-clear something you said earlier so we can keep all skill points, potion charges, max obels, and paragon points from renown for seasons?
Right. That's an important thing to clarify. So the renown, so things like paragon points at the end of the renown bar. You will start with some renown. You're not going to get those paragon points that require finishing the renown bar until you fill the renown bar.
Okay, well, so that's my fault because I misunderstood. So it wasn't that they didn't understand. I misexplained it. So currently, like in the Eternal Realm, if I
Right.
on one character I complete the full renown bar, so I get my obels and I get my paragon
Yeah.
points. If I roll an alt, I have those. I have the skill points. I have those potion charge. I have the obels. I have the paragon points. Right now, being that are shared between my characters on my account.
Some elements of the paragon system are shared between characters. Things like the Altars of Lilith also give you stat points.
Right, but I'm just saying that that's how it works today in the Eternal Realm in terms of going between one character to another. The renown unlocks on the bottom level are account-wide, yes?
In seasons, you will the things that are at the end of the renown bar, you will still have to acquire renown to get.
Right, that's why I was just trying to clarify what it is today for alts is different than what it will be in season reset. Right, so today with alts, I clear all on my account, I get it across all my characters. So you're saying when we do a season reset, and if you clear it all on a character, or like when you have a map that's revealed in the Eternal Realm, when I go into the season, the map will be clear.
Right.
I'll have the renown for that, but I won't have like potentially the max 80 obels and
Right.
the paragon automatically unlocked because I haven't discovered enough. I haven't gone and hit all those waypoints that would fill that bar.
Right.
Yeah.
But you
And-
will have the renown for revealing the map, and you'll have the renown for collecting the Altars of Lilith, to the extent that you have done that.
Right,
Yeah,
and that'll trigger the other things like potion and skill points. And
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah.
And Mr. Joey P, just ping me saying like, yeah, you get the renown from the Fog of
Sorry,
War
who's
clear.
Joey P? Is that one of the community members?
Yeah, Joey P. associate. but yeah.
Question from our own team's associate designer.
He mentions you get the renown from Fog of War clear and the Altars of Discovery, which is what Joe had just mentioned. But then enough to get you through the first 2 tiers of renown in each zone. So that's
So that was my fault. I thought it worked the way it works in the Eternal. Now it doesn't. It's basically we're just preloading you a bunch of renown that will then unlock the stuff for you. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got a pocket Joey P over there.
I know,
Pocket Joey P.
Pocket Joey P. Well, we well over the time estimate that I thought we were going to have, so I
Yeah,
apologize,
really.
everyone.
That's your fault.
We're eating into our lunch.
Facilitating.
But I do want to thank everyone for tuning in. This is our first Campfire Chat. Again, Campfire Chat's really good opportunity for us to actually talk with the community, address specific topics that players have been talking about, and at the same time, just chat.
Yeah,
Which is
I mean, the intention is we want to have more ad hoc, informal. We don't want to have to wait till some big thing or whatever. Like, this is a game we're all playing and want to talk about. So we just want to be able to not have this like, okay, the third Thursday of every month we're doing this. Like, we just want to be able to go like, hey, let's talk about the game and with the community. So we're going to try to do these more often and keep them light, keep them casual as best we can.
Yep, and obviously we still have the hardcore race going on. We actually posted an update on social media yesterday about how many people were up there.
Still like 700.
As of yesterday, still like 700 slots for people to make it on the statue.
We're actually digging the hole for the statue on campus. So they're pouring the cement thing to the statue can go on top of. So
Ron's always giving spoilers.
What, that we're putting the statue on campus? How's that a spoiler?
It's just like blocked off. No one can like see it. Even internal people can't see it.
I'm just saying it's kind of cool. I've never had that before in a game where your name, like as the development team is walking to lunch, they can see your name on the statue. I think it's kind of cool, and that reminds us of our community and our fans out there who are playing the game, and and people are like, oh my god, first time. Like I get the first thing, but we made it 1,000 for a reason. We wanted people to be able to enjoy the story and play the game at their pace, and we wanted to get through, our first 10 days plus early access, so that people didn't feel, because we knew, as our production director often says, it's going to be a little rock and roll, and we knew for hardcore, bold people who decided to do hardcore like on our first day, because definitely a little rock and roll. But we wanted people to have that opportunity. So there's still 700 spots available. So if you haven't rolled a hardcore yet, you can, today could be the day, or I'm sure we still have lots of time to get there. So, and maybe we'll do something around BlizzCon and the statue. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? The other thing that I did want to remind people is that obviously our next developer update live stream, we'll be talking about that date soon, but we are planning for that to be in early July. We'll be going over Season 1 details then.
Ooh, Season 1 details.
Ooh,
Well,
I just want to
know
do
what it
that
is?
in unison with you, that's all.
I know. Ooh. So the zombie thing, we're going to explain the zombie thing?
Yeah, we're going to talk about more about zombies.
Zombies.
Yeah. It's a really cool season.
It
Can't wait to
is.
go over all
It
the
is not.
details.
If you didn't watch the previous
Joe
stream,
now has to clear out.
Like, wait, you can't have an inside joke.
this is
People
a
don't
joke
know.
from the previous stream.
Right.
It
We
is
joke
not
that
zombies.
It is not zombies. Zombies was our illustrative example of what the season could be, but is not. So we were just referring to that.
But yeah, so make sure to tune in for that. And of course, we'll have more of these campfire chats. There's still lots of updates that are coming here really soon.
Yay, Tiffany!
Yay, Tiffany!
Keep rolling, just keep rolling.
And we'll have of course all those patch notes and details up on the site once those are available. As you guys heard, a lot of these changes are going to be coming before Season 1. So we'll make sure to keep you guys informed. Make sure to follow us on social at Diablo on Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc.
Here, smash that subscribe button for you,
Smash that
Adam.
subscribe button, guys. Like and subscribe. But yeah, thank you guys again, and we'll see you on the next stream.